I'm going to call this video Bob the Rebel ? And it's about ignorant religion, ignorant government, and crooked scientists. That's part of the title too. Excuse me. Well, why do I say that? It's because of freedom of speech. How ignorant is it to be, and I'd like to use other words besides ignorant, but we'll stick with ignorant. But freedom of speech is forbidden in our religions when it comes to religion and politics. And you know who else forbids freedom of speech besides Democrats? Is the drug cartels. They do the same thing. And so the religion, Christian, and I'm talking about Christianity mainly because that's the only real religion. Because it's the only one with a living God. How do you have a religion with dead God? That's not a religion. You have to have a God for it to, by definition, be a religion. All right? And so, and Christianity is not just a relationship. It is a religion. When people gather and form to worship as a religion, the formal gathering together of worship is religious practice. It's religion at that point. And it's by a lot of people who do have that relationship with God, and that is what you have to be saved, to be a Christian. Yes, it's a relationship with God to become a Christian. So, and it's trusting Him that He's real. It's trust. So you've bought into that you have a relationship with Him, and you've accepted the Holy Spirit. You're trusting it more than you feel it, even though. And that's where we get off a lot of times. We want to pretend like we feel something, or we have an emotion, and pretend we think that's some big spiritual thing. A lot of times it's just an emotion, but what really counts is that you do trust Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Anyway, I don't want to be on that subject too long, but Christianity is the only religion with evidence of a second life, and the only religion that shows a living God. So therefore, it's the only true religion, and we have the freedom of religion, not the freedom of false religion in America, but we have the freedom to talk about religion and discuss it and learn those things are true. So in the future, we may learn that, and then it'll come down to whether it's a hypocrite Christian church or a real one. That's because if we really become educated about that, that disqualifies all other religions. That's what America can actually do. America can actually do that, disqualify all other religions aside from Christianity. If everybody gets educated, because the truth is, education would disqualify all other religions, being truly educated. And so even if every religion were a fairy tale, including Christ, which you can't prove it's a fairy tale. They say you can't prove it's real. And I say also you can't prove it's a fairy tale. And you have Mary, who didn't leave the cross. The disciples gave up when Jesus was on the cross. And they went off embarrassed. And some of them, Mary didn't, because she knew who Jesus was more than anybody else. She knew she had not been with a man, and that God had put seed in her, the seed of Christ in her, miraculously, not through sex, right? So I've had some Muslims act like God had sex. He's evil. He's an adulterer. He had sex with Mary. No, he miraculously put seed in Mary, and she knows she had never been with a man, and she had not been with God sexually either, right? Or an angel sexually. So she knew that when he was on the cross, or else she would have done something that I heard Mark Lowry say, a Christian comedian and singer. I know he's crazy, but you don't have to hang him. Take him off the cross. She didn't say that. It's because she knew he was God. The same with God. So that's background that, I didn't want to take this much video time, but I'll try to speed up here. So we're saying don't talk religion and politics, and the church agrees with that. You're supposed to speak on your faith in Christ. So you have to talk religion. And you can't fall for that thing that says Christianity is not a religion. It's the only real religion. All right. But politics, thou shalt not kill. You can't talk about thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal. And you should not just talk about that as politics, but you should be talked about over and over again in many scenarios in different ways, and why it matters and why it helps. Because you love your neighbor. If you're not following those two laws, you're not loving your neighbor. Don't covet their property. Don't commit adultery. Don't cheat. Because you got to love your neighbor. These also are love your neighbor laws. These are love your God law, love God and love your neighbor laws, right? So we can enforce. We can actually appreciate police if they're helping to enforce, not stealing from people, protecting your property, in other words, and protecting you from violence and murder and assault. Those are the two main things we can patrol, and it's not a theocracy to do that. It's those laws are the best laws mankind has ever seen. Best laws mankind can make for each other. All right. So it's harder to monitor people not coveting, but we can become wiser and say when somebody's talking about what you have and knows in their business and how much money you make and all that kind of stuff. Look, and they're coveting. Look, don't covet and be jealous and all that kind of stuff. It leads to jealousy, which can lead to stealing or violence, right? So even if somebody's not, some people steal because they're jealous, not just because they need it or because they've gotten greedy, not because they're desperate. So it is tempting to steal when somebody's desperate. It can be to anybody who is even against stealing and doesn't steal. If they become desperate enough, then there can be that temptation. But some people have been trained their mind from a young age not to, it's just not an option. I'm one of those people. I don't steal. I've been in super desperate situations. And I've been so desperate once or twice where I was close to thinking, I'm going to, maybe I might have to steal. And I'm like, no way. And, but I've been that desperate before for a person who doesn't steal. And there are a few people who say, yes, he has. And I've never stolen anything, but I have been around people with my own stuff. Or even when I had borrowed something, but I had it on me and I went somewhere where it was a risk of it being stolen. And then the people accused me of being the one to steal. I was irresponsible, but I didn't steal something. But technically, I'm just saying that's my strength. I haven't stolen from people. I've never hurt anybody physically. Still have not. And I'm 52. But I have a weakness more with being lonely and depressed at times that I never found that soulmate. I wanted to be married and have kids, and then I'll give into, and I've had insomnia. I might give into not staying sober, and then if I'm not sober, I can be tempted to be pleasurable, fornicate, and all those kind of things. Mostly in my mind, I've done it, but that's my weakness. But stealing is not it. But there is forgiveness for people who steal. There's forgiveness for people who kill. There's from God. But you can't, but there's a difference between different sins. If somebody kills somebody, then you can't pay that back. You can't bring them back. If you steal from somebody, you can replace it. And there's a lot of people who just deny redemption, and you can pay them back, and they'll say, well, that's not the same. Doesn't matter. I still suffered those 2 days without my money, and you paid me back the money, but it's no good to me now. I wanted it then. There's people that do that, but the truth is they're stealing, trying to steal redemption. They're just thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about God. All right. So that's even the victim. The victims in those situations they shouldn't be that way. But they don't have to pardon you. Sometimes you can pardon somebody, but pardon is not forgiveness. Sometimes we pardon people to let things go, but usually you pardon somebody because you forgave. But forgiveness doesn't mean you have to pardon somebody. You forgive them and you don't hold a grudge and you treat them nice. You give them a second chance, but you still expect them to pay back their debt. So paying back their debt, people should have to pay back their debt, not promote life in prison for stealing. But if you pay them back, you get out. Now, but that doesn't count for if it was a violent way of doing it. You have to assess whether they're safe to come out. So Jesus says, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." When the Pharisees wanted to stone the woman at the well who had more than one husband, and so she was basically a harlot in a way, and it's like more like what do you call that? When the people marry more than one person, I forgot. But anyhow, I got way off the subject. So ignorant religion, I might try to summarize the rest. You got ignorant religion. Today, mostly it's ignorant because of they're doing what the drug cartels do and Democrats do in forbidding freedom of speech. So I said about religion and politics. So politics, the point I forgot to make is if you're not allowed to talk politics, which thou shalt not kill is politics. All right? We want to do that over and over again and train people's conscience not to fear killing. We want to do it over and over again and talk about not stealing to train people's conscience not to. And also to show them the importance of what happens if you support not stealing, then you're also supporting people not stealing from you. But you got a lot of people today who are tyrants in the drug cartels. They steal from whoever they want. But if you steal from them, they'll kill you. They don't just say, pay me back. They might kill you. They won't give you time to pay it back. If you just short them, they say that something costs this much or whatever, they might give you less than a day to pay it and want to kill you. Or they'll go ruin your bank account. You're hanging around them because they want it all right now. They won't give you a week to pay something or longer. It's pretty bad. But so you train people not to do that. You talk against stealing, but you show them that, look, if we support the laws against stealing, that helps you too, because people are trying to steal from you. There are people amongst those people who are tyrants and think it's okay to steal from who they've deemed it's okay to steal from. But if somebody steals from them, they'll kill them or whatever. Some of those people steal from each other, though. Some of those tyrants steal from each other. But if you make a real law that's consistent, thou shalt not steal, they're protected from theft. Okay? And they have their own team of people and they protect themselves from theft somewhat. But when it's hypocritical like that and tyranny, and you're allowed to steal from other people, then it comes back to bite them. But a lot of time it comes back to bite them because a lot of they end up killing each other and stuff like that. So anyway, so if you don't, what the people do is they don't talk about thou shalt not kill, so they just kill when they want to. That's my point. And so these people, I've run across these a lot of cartel, like white cartels that don't allow anybody to talk. And through homeless venues, they have meals and things like that. Nobody's allowed. They had Bible studies, and they don't allow anybody to talk at a Bible study because they don't want it to become real. And but they go there and pretend they respect the speaker just to get their food and that kind of stuff. But then they won't allow religion or politics to be talked about. But then they support jumping somebody, busting their head open over any minor thing they want if they feel like doing it, because they haven't been talked about it being wrong. They don't allow anybody to talk about it being wrong because that's politics. It's ethics. It's politics. It's morality being spoken about, but politics are part of morality and ethical talks. And so, and they tie into religion from that standpoint because our best laws come from the Ten Commandments. And God gave us those for governing. He didn't just give us that to show us we're sinners and we cannot perfectly keep these commandments. Later on, Jesus said, if you're just even angry at somebody in your heart, you're already guilty of the sin of murder. And he says to repent in your heart right away. And so there's a lot to train in your psyche. There's a lot to train. And so that's why, so technically you haven't killed somebody if you're angry in your heart, but it leads to that if you don't deal with it in your heart. And so a lot of people learn to deal with it because they don't want the consequence. They don't want the consequence of going to jail if they kill somebody. So they may not have forgiven in their heart, but so if we do patrol those things, we help deter violence, we help deter theft, even if it's not deterred, even if the person who is scared away from doing it doesn't do it for the right reason, but it helps them and it helps the victims not to be a victim, and it helps them to have time to actually go somewhere and ponder and be a little disgruntled maybe because they didn't get what they wanted, greedily get what they wanted, but they have time to think about how they avoided jail. They have time to think about how what they're doing is not fair. They have time to think about all that by force, and it's not in their heart, but it may help them be converted to Christianity at some point, to Jesus Christ, to God, who tells us to love our neighbors. That's not a bad thing. A lot of people say it is because it's not real. I don't know. There's evidence of God every time we're born. There's evidence of God every time we die. There's evidence that evolution is not real every time we're born and every time we die. And there's billions, 7 billion or more, 8 billion, I forget world population right now. 8 billion times that we'll just say that people have been born today and are going to die eventually. And that's all evidence of God and Jesus. Jesus gave us evidence that he created humans because he came here in human form. Anyhow, yeah, so the ignorance I want to talk about, and I did it in the right order this time. I talked about freedom of speech. It's really ignorant to give up your freedom of speech. And on businesses, we've been tricked. Even Republicans, not just Democrats. Republicans have fallen for the Democrat message that says not to talk religion or politics on the job or on vacation with your family. It's too offensive. Well, the people with the problem are the ones that get offended like that. And we're not supposed to teach people to get offended by talking about semantics even, and talking about knowledge and ethics and moral things and trying to do good things. Now, I mean, if some people are just mean about it, then it is offensive. But if people are trying to learn and view us, we're all sinners, we're all sinners. And they come about it and they want to catch up and discuss politics. They should be able to do it without hating Donald Trump, for instance, without hating George Bush, for instance. So, and without falsifying that somebody hates Obama and falsifying and hating on, qualifying hating people that disagree with Obama on same-sex marriage and disagree with Obama on abortion, and then calling them haters and racist because they disagree with abortion and disagree with Obama because of abortion. You're not supposed to, that's their fault for promoting hate for the people that disagree for those items and lying about that being racist. That's not racist. But racism is actually stuff like evolution. The only thing that's not racist in this world is believing in the Bible. That's the only thing that's not racist. If you believe that by faith in Jesus, that he rose from the dead and proved that the Bible is correct, and that we all came from God, Adam, and Eve, and Noah's family after the flood, and the ethnicity came from when God changed the language at the Tower of Babel, and that's how we got ethnicity. It's not even about skin tone. Skin tone probably most likely came from living near the equator for a few thousand years. That's Ham's family went down below the Sahara Desert for the most part, and they lived near the equator for many, many years, and the vitamin D in the vegetables and everything helps protect your skin from the sun rays near the equator. Makes sense to me. And it's geographically it makes sense. So people try to say black folks and white folks didn't exist and black folks were the real Israelites and all that kind of stuff. They're just making that stuff up, because you can see most of Israel is light skinned, and it doesn't matter that they're light skinned. I'm not saying, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is and was. And it's obvious that geographically, people that live near the equator in Africa were the darkest skinned folks. And I don't know what it was prior to that. Maybe we had medium skin. The lighter skinned folks are the ones that live in freezing regions like Russia and Northern Europe. And so Israel was probably medium skinned, somewhat a little more medium. And Mexico's down in Saudi Arabia, they probably started getting a little darker too. But who knows? It doesn't matter. I mean, you got a lot of light-skinned black people. You got some darker-skinned white people. I have a brother that's darker-skinned than me, and I think we may have Cherokee in us. I've heard we don't, but he looks like he could. And my uncles look like they do. Some uncles on the side, I thought we had Cherokee. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. Who cares? I like getting a tan. I like it when I have a tan, but I'm more fair-skinned. But when I tan, I'm not the most fair-skinned person ever. But in my family, I'm a little more fair-skinned than everybody else. But I tan up, and I'm from the same family, and we have different skin tone. All right, people in my same family. So what's the big deal, man? You hate me because I'm fair-skinned? Well, yeah, a lot of people do, but I don't see too many people hating somebody for having darker skin. As a matter of fact, in most of the white community, they think it's attractive to have a tan, but just because somebody's fair skinned doesn't make them unattractive to somebody. And we won't get into all that, because I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it varies what people think is beautiful. But obviously There is more beauty in somebody who's stayed in shape, stayed healthy, in a sense, physical beauty, I'm saying, than there is in letting yourself go. All right. But aside from that, everybody has something to like. If you're talking about beauty, but it's in the eye of the beholder, it's in the heart when you connect to somebody. And I don't know how to explain all the beauty stuff. All right. But that's too deep. That's psychological. But I have tried to figure that out and talked about weird stuff like that when I'm not sober before, and I'm like, that's kind of a waste. It's because what matters is the spirituality, mostly. But I mean, it does matter that you take care of your body. You should try to take care of your body and not die young and everything else. All right, take care of your temple, like the Bible says, and it helps keep your mind clear too, and be able to focus on God. I believe in sobriety for that. But yeah, I don't think people will have addictions. I'm going to switch over to the subject if I didn't forget something on the freedom of speech subject. But we're ignorant. I did forget something. We're ignorant about. We should be able to talk religion and politics because you got slavery without it. You got slavery without capitalism. Capitalism was built on Abraham Lincoln saying, basically Abraham Lincoln saying that everybody deserves to be paid for their labor. I mean, when you get rid of capitalism that pays people for their labor, what's left? So there is a problem with overcharging people, kicking people. They use the drug cartel. The drug laws are sabotage laws. They're crooked laws. The scientists are crooked. The evolutionists, I think, mostly ran the science that outlawed God's natural plants for medicine. And the cartel, they put them in the cartel's hands. The cartel comes from mostly using natural plants as their medicine, which does attract people because it works. It works. But most people I know who have had morphine at surgery have not gotten addicted to it, but some people do. But if you get addicted to morphine, it's because you don't believe in God, in my view. And you don't believe in keeping a healthy body. There's people who don't believe in God who want to be a nutrition person and stay healthy in the weight room and exercise. And they're not going to get addicted either because they don't want their body to go. Or if they want to be an intellectual, they're not going to stay addicted. So when a relapse doesn't mean addiction now, because somebody can use it as a medicine to get away from all the stress or something else, right? And that's medicinal use. So Proverbs chapter 31, I'm going to be a sore thumb about. I'm going to be that nonconformist. I am a nonconformist naturally somewhat as a philosopher, but I'm a nonconformist the way the Bible wants me to be, and I'm a nonconformist to church doctrines that are false. I'm a nonconformist to churches who don't tell the truth about science. We have to hold science accountable. You need philosophers to hold scientists accountable. I'm not an intellectual scientist that's smart as a scientist, but I've known scientists in high school, and a lot of them that are that smart, they're clumsy. They can't apply everything to life, and they're not always philosophers naturally. And even if they were, when you delve into the science, and they're always studying the chemical formulas or whatever they have to do, and delving into ideas sometimes that they like, they're not paying attention to philosophy, and they don't have time for it if they're putting together. For instance, if you're engineering and putting together a car, you got to delve into that, and then you might have to do 1,000 more cars because it becomes a sell item. So, but it's crooked science though when they've outlawed God's drugs, and I think that is pharmacia. When the Bible's talking about pharmacia in the last days, it's not talking about the drug cartels like you think it is, although it's connected, the drug cartel connected to this. So the pharmacia is the fact that our hospitals and psychiatry field and everything else, they don't have any natural medicines they're prescribing. Their first order should be to prescribe a natural medicine that God created. But they're just prescribing synthetic drugs. And one example of synthetic drug is fentanyl. All right, that's an example. Meth and speed are not natural. They're synthetic. So they're not so bad because if you think of it that way, it's just synthetic like some of these other drugs the doctors create. And so in 2% form, there are forms of speed that are more like 2% potency, and they're not that strong. They're not so bad. But what's the reason from that standpoint, I'm saying? But it is bad when it's too strong. And it is bad for your body because it's not natural. And so even something that's natural, that's a medicine, still messes with your metabolism, and it's not good for you in too much of a dose. But if it's not natural, it's going to have other negative effects on your body. So, but there is a reason to have some synthetic drugs. That is a science that they created the synthetic drug with. It's called medicinal science. And I may have a part 2 because this is taking too long. But part 2 to the same video. So I can't go past 30 minutes or it may not download at all. So synthetic forms A doctor should prescribe always, I say always, natural medicines from a natural plant. And I think other people can be licensed to sell the herbs, the plant itself. That tea, you can make a coca leaf tea, and it uses 3 leaves. Whereas in Colombia, they have them stomping thousands and thousands of leaves at a time to make 1 line of coke, maybe. But when you just have 3 leaves, you put it in a tea bag, and it's not even as strong as coffee to drink it as a tea, and it's good for depression. It's probably God's most natural medicine for depression. If I had to say, guess, because I've had experience, I've been a lab rat with a lot of stuff, right? Not that I'm not condoning that. I'm not promoting that. I'm not a role model, but I'm a person who was pre-exposed to some of those things. And I could see that they were lying because I was a Christian when this happened to me. I was already Christian. And I'd say a real Christian. Somebody who cared about people not going to hell, cared about sharing God's fruit of the Spirit with people, his love, his forgiveness, knowing I'm equally a sinner with everybody else. And which, by the way, when I'm defending myself on this, everybody's looking at me like I'm the worst sinner. So what we've done, we're a bunch of Pharisees. Church, religion has become a bunch of Pharisees, and so is government. And they're supporting the cartel. The cartel feeds all these notions, and they discriminate. A lot of times marijuana dealers promote killing somebody who does crack or cocaine use. They promote harming people who do speed. Don't call it meth, let's call it speed. It's a form of speed. And so, and they're promoting discrimination of medicine against medicine. Well, marijuana is a downer. Uppers are usually safer than downers, like caffeine. And not for strokes now. You can still get a stroke and stuff. But if you're driving at 3 o'clock in the morning, you do caffeine, that's a good thing. Now, some people will say, no, you should pull off and sleep. Well, you can't always pull off and sleep. And some people demonize it like a drug and a medicine and say, no matter what, you shouldn't do that. Well, that's them. They've never done it. Maybe they don't have a problem with caffeine or whatever. But I can tell you what's really the bigger sin is hating on people. Like they actually use drugs to do that. Talking about drugs to demonize and hate people and created an unpardonable sin, and it's not an unpardonable sin. But you're not going to get addicted to morphine. I think I forgot to finish this point. If you believe in God, you might do it for a day or whatever, but you're like, I need my mind to focus on God, and I got to quit this. I used it for the medicine or the pain I had, and I got to quit, and I'm going to stop before I get more physically accustomed to it. So, but it's part of your appetite. If you've ever taken, the rule of thumb too is if you've never eaten spinach, you'll never miss spinach. So you got to think of that when it comes to medicines even more. You don't want to take any medicines or try any medicines. If you've been pre-exposed like me, you think everything's a lie. And I don't think that I'm wrong for being curious and wanting to be a scientist. I'm wanting to be a philosophical scientist, lab rat, and test the truth about stuff. And really, there probably should be room for that somewhere, for maybe people who are pre-exposed to help study the science. But who's going to be honest? It's hard to say who's going to be honest. I'm honest, and I'm conscientious. I know when I've had a migraine headache, it was after I used caffeine. And so I'm going to have to definitely do a second video, and it may be a lot shorter than this because I'm almost done, really, but I can't fit it in before 30 minutes. But so am I a rebel? No, I don't think I'm a rebel. I think that Christianity has got a lot of things wrong. The unpardonable sin is not taking a medicine. It's not using a medicine. And you can't decide for each person. There are some things in the Bible, some things are a sin to one person and they're not a sin to another person. And so you don't know exactly when somebody's abused a medicine, and doctors can't tell you when it's abuse and then put you in jail for 14 years for taking too much of the medicine. That's ridiculous. That's theft. That is theft. And that's qualifying the government to steal private property rights. It's a real big trick. And people fall for it because, there's a thing with medicine that if you're close friends with somebody and all of a sudden they've zoned out on you because they're taking a medicine, you can get real feelings hurt and jealous and all that. Then, it can influence somebody to want to use in a marriage relationship because they want to be on the same plane as their partner. So that's, but you don't ever want to use something But if it does become part of your appetite, that doesn't make it an addiction. If you decide in 30 days, I'm gonna, or 60 days, or half a year, I haven't had this in a while. It's no big deal. I want to try it because it's part of your appetite. That doesn't mean you're an addict if you do that. So, an addict is somebody who doesn't get past the 3-day phase of addiction. Got to go. Bye.